Hey peeps, this is Kizo. Welcome back to PTP Deep Dive, a series where I closely examine everything in the DPT PTP and keep you up to date on everything happening with the game. In this PTP, we have Tokyo Ghoul being added by Daylight, where the Ghoul themselves bring nothing but misery. I meant the perk. What did you think I meant? And a lot of balance changes. Scratch marks now spawn 400% more, killers can give up if survivors out-hide them, Xenomorph got taken out the back, Eero now has 100% more map and 100% less branches, and also they patched out on your flex. Allegedly. Timestamp skip to the relevant sections if you're interested. Let's get right into it. So Bleach VR stated that they updated the scratch mark logic to improve its consistency and make it spawn on the ground more. I'm not going to lie, this is just bullshit. There is no update to the logic, the spawn rate of the scratch marks just got turned up to 300%. And I'm not even entirely against this, but like this is a bit absurd. You can tell this change got implemented haphazardly because lightweight does nothing now. The scratch mark spawn chance reduction does nothing as the base amount has gotten increased by so much that its effects never kick in. The scratch mark change needs to be tuned down at least a bit, and lightweight needs to get turbo buffed. It's completely worthless now. The surrender mechanic got implemented and I have some issues with it. Firstly, we need to rename it from surrendering to something more neutral. We want unfun matches to end fast and for nobody to feel like the early end is a fail or a loss. Rename it the same way Entity Displeased got renamed to the Entity Hungers, maybe just called End Trial. Secondly, there needs to be way more options to end the match early. Currently the conditions are very rare and some make little sense. Ending early while all survivors are bots should just instead do a finisher Mori and get you your challenges complete and give you maximum blood points and emblems. You should be able to end early if a teammate disconnects early as well. Lastly, what the fuck is up with the new TC penalty? It just deletes all the items and add-ins in your account. What the fuck? Surely this is a bug. Overall, this is a very early edition. We need expansions and make this the preferred option when matches are either already decided or just miserable. So there's been a general terror radius update, so now we're less standardized to the 32 meter paradigm. We now have Billing Blight share 40 meter terrorists with Wesker, and a lot of other girls had their terror radius reduced to 24 meters. This does mean that Pig got buffed and immediately invalidates all the good things added to this update, and I will be making a change in the Dark Edition to revert this crime. Overall, I very much like this, but Colorophobia is getting problematic with slugging. That perk in particular needs to get looked at. Another particular highlight of this is Ghostface. You can have a 4 meter terror radius as Ghostface, which to my knowledge is the smallest terror radius in the game possible. Even Dead Rabbit Tier 2 Myers is slightly bigger as his TR reduction add-on is percentage minused, while reduction for Ghostface is flat. While crouching with a dropshift add-on and monitor and abuse, you will not exist. This is insane potential, even for a stealth killer. The mind game potential for this is wild, and this is extremely dynamic. I love it. It's wacky powerful, and not just boring strong. Very glad to see more variety added to this baseline characteristics of killers. So for a while now, survivor score events were really bad. Especially if you wanted to earn any survival points without being an obsession, you essentially couldn't. There's been a major rework of the score events. I'll pull up the buff info on screen right now, but largely we've seen at least a double or a tripling of PP gain. We also had to rework to some score events. Pal drops and stuns, along with any totem glances, award you survival points instead of boldness. I am really happy to see survival BP gain go up. Previously it was basically throwing in terms of blood points to play survivor outside a Swift stack with 4 BP offerings, but it might actually be more viable now. Nobody should be upset with this. It's just not benefit for all. The Ghoul is the most mechanically complex killer I've ever covered in this series that is already a year old now. Before I can discuss how this killer stacks up, I need to discuss how they work. The Ghoul can charge up the tentacles to propel themselves rapidly through the environment, similar to Wesker. Unlike Wesker, however, you're required to use it more like a grappling hook on objects and not just pressing the button for a dash. Akin to Slinger, should you have a small object in your way, you might brush up against it and slide past it. The dashes of John Tokyo Ghoul are very similar to how Old Doctor used to work, with Tentacle Russians and in one gameplay being 2 stands, kind of. Once switching to dash mode, you can wait a while before changing your second dash, like Wesker with Egg, but you can also cancel it immediately. Should you aim it at a survivor, You will do a grab attack if you do it in the second rush, similar to Blight, putting them in deep wound and marking them. You cannot down them with your power. Vaulting over the windows or panels with your power works just like Wesker, with a hitbox damaging or even downing anyone window attacking and putting you into cooldown. Grab attacks will send you into enraged mode, which lasts until no marked survivors remain. While enraged, you will have 3 dashes and non-existent cooldown if you use all 3, and vault over things faster. After a dash, especially with a brown anon, you can do a slide, like if the ground is all looped up, and catch up to the survivor immediately. I've seen some people, including myself very initially, describe this killer as a cross with Wesker and Legion. That's only a little correct. Ghoul's very strong, although not super easy to use power, immediately gets you the first hit. However, what people didn't pick up on immediately is the insane skill ceiling and potential of sliding with them. Using a brown sliding anon, you can play around most loops in the game, similar to a Wraith catching up and body blocking with double speed addons. There is an insane skill cap at utilizing your power to guarantee you getting them one down. Holding W versus this killer is impossible. Your mobility rivals Hillbilly, and so almost does your lethality should you master them. I frankly don't know what changes besides bug fixes and making the slide on the baseline we can add from PDB to live. I could suggest lessening auto-aim stuff on survivors, but I don't know how that will feel on controller. This design, if buffed even a little past that, will be way too oppressive. Currently it's threading the needle for both sides, and I'd like it to stay that way. For once, a killer design seems like it can achieve high strength without being insanely bullshit. I wonder if Juan Tokyo Ghoul will bring forth an MFT meta. I'd like to mention right after the Joe Tokyo Mama Ghoul section that there's been an unprecedented level of developer response to this PDB. For example, the designer behind Tokyo Ghoul shared the reasons for why the power's aim functions the way it does at this current juncture. A large citation has been technical limitations, which is insane to me. How have the foundations of this game been ignored for this long to the point it impacts even basic design? However, I really enjoyed reading that response, and the team also elaborated quite notably on the terror release adjustments and why someone like Chucky didn't get a change while others did it, and they also managed to hint that future killers will likely have more terror release variety. I very much appreciate this and hope to see this extend substantially in all future PDBs and patches. I understand wanting to over-communicate and ruin excitement or take amendments that the team can handle. But explaining where the team came from design-wise while making a change is nothing but a positive influence that lessens toxicity and can help us give better feedback to the devs. The Forsaken Boneyard has gotten a massive overhaul that the developer update communicated extremely poorly. There are updates to both maps, all the tiles, main building changes, and a new variation of the map. I've seen some killer mains cry about this, but I genuinely am confused to why, as this is a huge buff to killer. First up, main building on Eerie has had its window plus breakable wall moved around again, just to gaslight you and me. It also added drop downs to a few of the corners of balcony, which is nicer for everyone, and I wholly support. Secondly, Eerie tiles have been nerfed substantially. A ton of new much weaker filler tiles and LOS blockers. The map is notably weaker now, and there's much less interconnectedness. I don't think Eerie is even that bad anymore. There's also basically no more weird branches you bump on everywhere, and the shack is now a much more standard looking like on our maps. Speaking of shack, there is now a variant of Boneyard with shack as main building. It's extremely small, probably the smallest map in the game. It essentially is a much compressed Wrecker's Yard, with yes, some insane killers sometimes, not always, spawning chained in the shack. However, it is quite tiny, especially M1 killers should have a good time on it as mobility is pretty much unrequired. Overall, fantastic touch-ups to the second most contentious role in the game. We have like one, technically 5 variants mapped left at least over survivors. I'm sure killer mains are still going to cry, however. I do want to know, the developer update communicated this so badly that it looked like Eerie had no updates and only the new variant would have changes. The level of miscommunications in my notes is getting wild. PHVR needs to look it up. In lieu of deep wound man times being reduced by 2 seconds, Legion's got some buffs in store. Their fatigue is much better now, and they got a bunch of add-ons partially integrated in their base kit. The cooldown slashed by 25%, frenzy duration increased by 10%, and the speed boost post-hit is 5%. Bigger. As pertaining to this, got nerfed accordingly. This feels great. Legion's gained a lot of quality of life, and can actually run some of the Silry add-ons without feeling like they're throwing a match immediately. I don't have any complaints besides maybe integrating the extended lunge in Frenzy add-on partially into base kit as well. Good stuff. So the Xenomorph has gotten nerfed significantly. However, I don't think the nerfs should be reverted. The tail finally feels dodgeable, and turrets have their impacts, and I think it's good. I do not like how bad it feels on the Xenomorph side, however, and we need a bunch of buffs to her kit to compensate. BGR started this already, with tunnels receiving a bunch of buffs. However, as of right now, it's faster to lose your power and go to the tunnels than to wait for the heat to dissipate. With tunnels for Xenomorph, you get turbo buffed to compensate, and you should get really fast heat loss in tunnels. I also heavily advocate for 2-turret stacking to be nerfed. If multiple turrets are shooting you at the same time, it should just be the same rate and not stack. Make tunneling great again! I really hope that the negative feedback doesn't make BHVR back down on this much healthier design idea for Xeno, as she desperately needs to be tuned down versus solo players and improved versus Swifts. Chuck is faster now and has a bit of a small cooldown. That's about it, but the changes do make him notably stronger. He really does not need much to be oppressive, and thorough buffs will just make him overpowered again. I don't mind this, but I also just don't think his design is powerful much past its current iteration. Maybe they could add the flicks back. Here's an overlay that will showcase all the new perk changes. Overall, most of them are great and non-problematic, focusing on buffing weak and underused perks. Lots of Celestial Survivor perks that get buffs to their cooldowns, or durations above to some underbaked killer perks. I have no general complaints, except maybe Alien Instinct being a bit overtuned. I know some people expect a more in-depth analysis of perks, but these are pretty safe changes overall to cooldowns and durations. However, I dislike Knockout severely. The new Knockout gives survivors a lengthy hinder if they drop out and run away within a few seconds. It's not insanely impactful, as interactions with pound sprays can be very janky, but it just feels terrible on the survivor end. There needs to be a complete rework. This concept is ass. Pre-drops are the only counter to most of the higher tier killers, also screw hinder in general. Regardless of how effective it is, I just don't think this is a good addition to the game. Before I delve into new perks, I must note that the patch notes for them were completely broken until a day after the PTB. We are missing 30% of the descriptions, which is actually just so dumb I do not know how the hell BHR managed that. So first up, Hex Clusterfuck Hex Nothing But Misery. After damaging a survivor 8 times with basic attack, Adultism becomes lit, and any basic attacks afflict survivors with 5% hinders for 15 seconds. This is bullshit. It's not compelling, and its stacking eventually becomes extremely stupid. It also runs into the problem of Pentiment existing and making mandatory Hex cleanses in solo queue a death sentence. Here's how it looks with just 6 stacks of Stability and Rapid Brutality. Any killers who have relied on once could run this to get a heavy buff that survivors will eventually have to spend time cleansing. And if you're curious, no, you can only activate it multiple times after a Hex Totem is cleansed. Unbuffable and their anthem, hated. Furrowing Divine is an odd fire-up cousin, where for every time you damage a survivor, you gain a stack up to 8. For each token, dropping, picking up, and hooking survivors is 4% faster. I like it. I think fire-up should be buffed a bit to compensate, personally, as this is kind of its niche, but people really underestimate the value of picking up and dropping survivors faster. This is basically Lightborn and partial palliative immunity as well, as you can drop people really quickly to avoid missing them entirely, even when body blocked and being forced into a save. Its stacking with fire-up is hilarious, you just insta-pick and drop survivors. Although I will note that bug-various survivors who wiggle out can move away sooner as the drop speed buff is applied to that part of the stun animation for some reason. Pretty neat perk, and I'm very happy to see something speed up hooking. Finally, Nana Free is a tiny bit underwhelming perk. It's essentially a more powerful cruel limit for the endgame only. I don't know, I think it could be buffed a bit, but it will have its niche. And I don't mind it very much. It's good. Overall, I'd say besides with Nothing But Misery, brought by the designer of Hex Nothing But Misery, the perks are pretty neat. To round out the PTB, I'll talk about some average news that don't fit neatly together. There's been a bunch of minor UI updates to the lobby, with the biggest being to the chat. It's been reworked from the ground up, and of course, this was submitted in the patch notes. You now see the entire chat history, regardless of when you join the lobby, or go into the in-game chat, and you see when players join or leave it as well. I really like this. We are finally only a decade behind chatting technology, and not 2 decades behind. Flashbangs having your audio blinding you while you're looking away have supposedly been fixed. This patch on the Silent Derail removed Herobrine from Minecraft, and at least Moya Jajang is doing it as a joke, at least as far as you know, while PHR have been fighting with Flashbang Demon for half a decade at this point. A bit embarrassing, really. Speaking of environments, only flicks are being removed, confirmed potential by PHR. This gets the killer skill ceiling. Why? Because consoles can't do it. This whole issue makes me think of Photokill, frankly. You can patch for your bullets in that game to make them go faster because of a bug that got turned into a feature because it was cool as shit. Meantime, even such basic things as TBD that have stayed in the game for years and years get patched as unintended and just ruin the player experience. I'm big hoping this is going to be integrated baseline or at least revert the community outrage. Anyway, what I mean is that we should end punching your own bullets to death by daylight. Alright, I'm adding an update to the section. Either multiple developers confirmed this bug fix as intentional, community manager now confirmed it as not. What the fuck? Cool, I guess. Alright, you've either been watching for 15 minutes or you skip straight to the summary section. And you guys consider liking and subscribing. These videos take a lot of effort to make. Same news for my Patreon, but we'll talk about it more later. Let's summarize the Tokyo Ghoul chapter being added to DBD. The new killer is a pretty fantastic addition with a highly complex power of it needs to be changed extremely carefully. A lot of new killer is weak, Choir persists due to high skill floor. Solid 8 here, and I'd like any tweaks to be small and careful. Forever Dwight is a silly for a fire-up cousin, I think at most could do with a teeny buff. Hex Nothing But Misery is a clusterfuck addition which just produces miserable outcomes and can't really exist within the context of Philip Bender. Another 3 is a data underwhelming and game product fit by being used in specific builds, but likely won't get the right use, which is fine. Generally, very high quality execution in most gameplay and visual elements of the chapter, although I can't speak to the faithfulness of the German Ghoul Tokyo adaptation. However, I can't help but highlight the fact that due to BHR ignoring the technical foundations of the game, they're getting limited in killer power design. The killer genius for PvP were very wild. Legion has received a plethora of satisfying quality of life buffs that integrate parts of their add-on baseline. They could do a bit more of Legion, but currently it's already very comfy to play Legion with much less need for add-ons. Good stuff. Check to receive an inoffensive buff that finds a better middle ground for his ease of use / power balance. Good stuff. As you know, because a substantial overall nerf, but comes from a healthy place on the left and needs a lot of compensations to her kit. That's just making fire dissipate rapidly in tunnels, buff tunnels even more, and make multiple turrets not stuck in their fire. Needs more changes. A lot of kids have gotten terrorist adjustments, also with Ghostface being among the biggest winners. Good stuff. Perk tweaks this time around have been largely positive. The mindset of HPR remains with lots of undervalued and or underpaid pros getting buffs to make them stand out more. Generally, I have pretty much no quarrel with any of the news, as again, buffing weak perks is not a huge worry to anyone. However, I can't say I like the new knockout. Henry feels bad, and pre-dropping the main counterblade form to a lot of higher tier killers. I'll appreciate reworking knockout, but please a different design BHR. Mostly good stuff. A bunch of variety changes got added this time around also. The surrender mechanic has been added and it's a good groundwork for the game, but news changes. It should be looser and be reframed as a fast track of the match, not a surrender option. Currently has too many negative connotations, however, still a really good addition to the game. And the new mending times feel nice and are generally a good change. It has gotten the major nerfs and a new, more balanced variant with Shack as its main building. Along with it, there's been a general collision pass and the main building balconies got opened up. Good stuff. Just got a full-on rework that now always loads all messages and tells you when people join or leave. Good stuff. Onlyflex got removed, confirmed removed, and then confirmed unremoved. Absolute cinema. Select my spawn rate got increased by an obscene amount and life is rendered useless. Thumbs down by me. Rumor has it, flashbangs got fixed. It's like the 10th time. Absolute cinema. Overall, this PDB is a substantial step forward for DBD in a lot of aspects, but still isn't enough for me. Looking forward to seeing more of a quality of life initiative materialize in DBD, and I'm remaining very afraid for post-PDP adjustments. That's it for PDB Deep Dive peeps. If you'd like to see more of this content, like, subscribe, share the video around, and if you want me to actually be able to afford to keep making more videos, consider subscribing to my Patreon. A huge thank you to Luna, Theo Morbat, and Sojus for supporting me on Patreon and getting exclusive PTS, bloopers, Discord roll, and shoutouts like these. Actually, I'm getting in cheaper, so this support matters a lot. That's it for this video. Discuss your thoughts in the comments, join the Discord, follow me, Blue Sky, all that good stuff. I bid you peeps.
Absolute cinema.